All righty. So I'm going to record this session here just so we can kind of circulate it. If you have anybody else from your team that wasn't able to sit in and would like to kind of catch up on some of the new features in Omnidek. Like I mentioned earlier, we are very excited. We've been hard at work here over the last couple of months, building out some pretty game-changing new features for the application. Features that we believe we can take in a bunch of different directions in the future, but really just maximize the value of the platform for our clients. And so we appreciate y'all participating in this little session. So I'm going to kind of walk through. I'm going to do my best to balance PowerPoint and software. So forgive me if I have to bounce here a bit, but I'm really just going to kind of go through kind of in the sections of the software. What are some of the new enhancements that are in the software? And then from there, if y'all have any questions, just feel free to chat below. So just to kind of get started, this is version 1.33 is what we call it. Just want to highlight it's not version 10. So we've got a lot of really cool places we're going to take the software over the next couple of years. And we're really excited about where the opportunities are. What you'll find here, kind of in the first thing I want to highlight is, the engine of our workflow application and kind of the success of our application over time is going to be our ability to really meet every requirement that a customer's workflow would have. And you know what, we think we did a really good job in both organizing the software to have a hierarchy structure so we can call those hierarchies when needed to really optimize those types of processes. And also kind of giving the conditional workflows and the node-based workflow that you see today in the software. But obviously, as we mature the application, we obviously need to enhance these workflows. And once we get clients out in the market using workflows, we need them to be able to edit those and modify them and be able to, to better have visibility of where certain things are in that particular process. So a lot of the enhancements that you see here in this newest build are actually, I'll kind of give you an example, are here. So let's say, for example, in the previous build, let's say I was building a workflow for a particular form. I would come in and I would really just keep adding nodes to this particular workflow. If I was going to call a hierarchy so that the direct supervisors needed to approve it first. And then from there, maybe I added a condition. So maybe this is like the total dollar amounts over a certain number. And then if it's true, it goes to another level of approval. And then if it's false, it goes to maybe another one. Well, we would catch clients that were really, had a lot of active workflows that were out there, and they had a lot of branching and whatnot. And then from there, we needed the ability to kind of maybe come in and adjust a workflow midstream. And there was not a really easy way of elegantly doing that. So now inside of the system, we have the ability to dynamically insert an approval or remove an approval if need be, which is a big value add. If you're an administrator of the software, this is a big pickup. But in addition to this, we also gave the ability to name the node. So let's say, for example, the first node is like project manager approval, right? So now whenever I name it, it's going to let me kind of visually see that this first node is the PM approval. Then maybe the condition is over here, and maybe this is it's at finance's desk or something along those lines. So now that you can kind of name this, it gives a visual aspect to the workflow that now when you're quickly looking at it, you kind of know, okay, that's the Arizona division and that's the Colorado division or whichever. So just these little pieces to the workflow. This was a big architectural change underneath the hood, being able to go edit and modify these things, but we were able to provision it for some of the future things that are coming, and I'll get to that in a second. Now you see, once we kind of give these the naming structures to the workflow, we now have the ability to, whenever we're reporting inside of our Insights viewer, I can actually now select the current status, and this will actually call the current status of the workflow. So now I can see the things that are at the start node or at the project manager level or an ops or whatever OM is, right? So this now lets me group it and have a visualization of where these forms are in the particular process, and I can see it from the actual Insight report. So this is a big value add just for visibility's sake. Obviously, you can name the nodes however you want, but this is a big enhancement to workflow in this build. Now, we're really just laying the foundation for where we're going to be taking workflow in the next several builds. One of the things that we're getting pushed more and more from our clients for is to have parallel workflows and also be able to just explicitly route a form to somebody mentioned on the form. Like, let's say, for example, I just want to route it to whoever the project manager was selected on the project. Obviously, we can handle that with, condition-based workflow and things like that. But in a lot of the smaller accounts that we were getting, or more of the ad hoc type workflows, they just need the ability to select a user and then let it route to them. So we're going to be adding that into the form. The big process that we're going to be adding into workflow, though, and this will be coming right at the end of the year and the first part of next, is actually parallel workflows. If you can appreciate kind of the way that our workflow branches, it's kind of like a true-false or it's an and/or kind of flow. In parallel workflows, it allows you to really create as many tracks of the workflow as you'd want. So you could have 6 or 7 different potential ways to flow it. And then those workflows work in parallel, and then they ultimately come back to a single end node. And so that's going to be some restructuring that we're going to do underneath the hood, but this is going to open up just a tremendous amount of opportunity for supporting some really advanced variations, and we think really elevate Omnidek as a workflow tool into some of the larger processes. In addition to that, workflow today really has kind of it's a condition or it's an explicit approval. One of those are really the node selections that you have as an opportunity. We're going to be adding in tasks and actions. So those tasks can effectively just create a notification. For example, if somebody needs to be sent a text message or an email when certain things hit a particular node for approval. But we're also going to be able to create additional sub-work processes. So let's say, for example, as part of the onboarding process, we have a couple of different workflows that are all sub-processes. If somebody's an executive hire, if somebody's a field hire, or something like that, well, we can create additional workflows underneath the hood by calling what we're going to call a create. So once it hits a particular node, it can create a workflow, and then it just moves on to the next. Or it can do a create and wait, which is effectively waits for that workflow to complete itself, and then it moves on to the next process. So we're really excited about where we're going to be able to take this and to doing a lot of the different variations of the process flows for clients. And also too, just as a kind of a convenience factor, we're going to be adding the at mentions inside a chat to invite somebody into the conversation. So if I was chatting next to the payment application, I could hit, at, Adam Wilder, who's the VP of Finance, and he could be brought into the conversation as a real quick, function over just the normal having to click a few buttons to invite. So those are some of the big enhancements to workflow that we're really excited about. Now, another feature that's been out for really a couple of months now, but we're adding a couple of more bells and whistles to it, is the Embed PDF feature. If you're not familiar with this feature, I'll give you a little bit of a highlight. So we actually use this feature pretty heavily. Inside of this is our Omnidek instance, we have a portal for new hires. So if somebody were to come work for Omnidek, we invite them to come into the new hire portal. We do this by inviting a particular user by putting their email address in, putting a free user in, and then selecting them to invite to the new hire portal. Now that portal that we have built looks like this. It's got my little welcome to the team. It's associated just to the new hires. So whoever I invited to the new hire portal, this is the view that they see. And then I've got their new hire packet and then an out of office request in there if they've got some vacation planned. So what this looks like to somebody onboarding with the team is that if they log in, let's see, here, this is the portal experience that we designed for them. And then when they come down to the fillable forms here, this is where they're greeted with a literal embedded PDF. Now, this one doesn't have some of the redaction and the highlight and add a note, which you can add that just by clicking a button inside of the form designer. But this is an embedded PDF. This has our emergency contact forms and employee handbooks and so on in here. But this is a really nice feature. If you didn't know about it, we have this in here. You simply just attach a fillable form and drop the signatures in place. Whenever it comes to filling out this form, I'll simply start filling the PDF here. And then it's now just a fillable form here for me to enter in. And then once I'm done filling it out, I'll hit start signing it, and then this will prompt me to do accept the electronic signature agreement, and then here sign. And then from there, I'm done signing and I can finish. So this is a really cool feature. Again, all it is a fillable PDF. So if you have this, maybe some forms that are just required by the state or the local governments or whatnot, maybe they're just a really complex form you've used for a long time and you want to maintain that, you can simply do that inside of the system, and then, but they're still going to take all the proper workflow rules that you build for that particular form. So this is a real big feature add for us, just to kind of highlight kind of where we're headed with that. We're going to be doing more user specific. Oops, sorry, I got a couple more people coming in. So we're going to be more user specific logic where you'll be able to tie a particular signature to a particular user on the form. That'll kind of get it more into the DocuSign world. We're also going to do a DocuSign integration as well. One of the utilities that we use offers that for us, so we're going to be expanding that. And also being able to utilize the text more for reporting purposes in the PDF will be a big deal. Now that viewer right now is really one directional. It's designed to kind of have like a template PDF that you would pull down and use, just like kind of a new hire packet. But we're actually going to be using that viewer for whenever you attach a PDF too. So if you did, let's say you're using a form and you attach a PDF file as a supporting doc, it'll actually give it that same viewer rather than having to load it outside of the system. So that'll be another opportunity as well. When you start thinking about the redactions and being able to highlight and draw notes and put sticky notes and whatnot, that'll just give another value add for more collaboration if we want to drag in the document and then route it around for review. So very excited about the PDF embed feature. So now on to the behemoth. This is the new feature that we built that we really think is a game changer for us. If you can appreciate, this is really what we were building with Omnidek, is that we didn't want to take over every single function in the company, but we wanted to be the de facto approval engine for most processes inside of the company. And what we needed to be able to do was to potentially intercept data. So effectively, like, when maybe there's, some type of transaction that's sitting in a particular database, we can pull that transaction in, route it for review, and then update that transaction once it's been approved. There's a whole bunch of processes and examples that I'll give you, but this is really what we were building, and we call this affectionately a cluster. So a cluster really allows us to build a placeholder for data. It's a dynamic placeholder, and it lets us feed data into Omnidek from a external source. So an external source could be a ERP system, some Access database program. It could also be an IoT device. Currently, we're using clusters in a couple of locations. One of them is a weigh station. So we're actually getting the weigh transaction and we're pulling it in, routing it for review, and then ultimately to converting that over to an invoice. We're doing that with facial recognition and time clocks, where people literally just walk into a plant, it reads their face, clocks them in, even checks their temperature. And just the logging of that activity of somebody entering in and then leaving, clocking them in and out, we're pulling that in. I'll give you a couple of examples of what that looks like, and creating work tickets. So the goal of cluster, I know that's probably a really difficult explanation of what we'll do. I'll show you this, but it really gives us the ability to kind of design interfaces with no code inside of the system to gather data from external sources, or just create more robust entry function in a form. So I'll give you a couple of examples of this. So inside of Omnidek, we can come into the form designer and we can build effectively a grid entry for whatever the process might be. So let's take it, for example. So if I go into my clusters section here, you'll now see System Master Detail. This is where I simply drag it in here. And let's say, for example, I'm going to build kind of a crew-based timesheet, for example. It's one with labor and one with material. And this could be me mimicking an app that I already have and I want to replace that. So what I would do is I'd say, okay, I'm going to configure the header. And let's say, okay, I want to have a job lookup. I want to have an employee lookup for the superintendent, maybe the date, and maybe a little note section or something like that. So then what I would do here is I simply go to the first one, and then I claim it here, and we'll say it's job. And then this data source would be job, which would be, this is the synced assets that we have from the accounting system. And then I'd move on over here to, super. And then here would be maybe my list of employees or maybe just superintendents. Now, I can kind of continue on doing this, but this is how I build the header of the particular cluster. Now I'll go into the bottom and I'll configure this first tab, and let's call it labor. So this labor now is, let's say, for example, I'm entering in time. Okay, I'm going to want to have maybe the employee, maybe the cost code, let's say maybe a description, and maybe a checkbox if they got per diem or not, right? So what I can do is I'm laying out this cluster, this grid here, and I can do the same thing as well by adding another tab over here for equipment. I'm not going to go through this whole exercise, but this is how I can build a cluster or a multi-tab grid entry for whatever the process might be. So there's no coding. It's just just as easy as building with the form designer. This is my way of really laying out a grid type entry the way that I want. So the end game of this is really, in very elementary purposes, like if I come here to the timesheet, this would be an example of one that's built. I select the job over here. Whenever I select my employee list, I can add as many of them as I want. So these could be large crews, all the pay types and the crafts and all this other stuff here. This is just them kind of entering it in accordingly. Let's say they worked 8 hours, and then they can spread it across multiple cost codes across the top, right? So let's say this is just how they set it up, right? So let's say they did 4 hours here, and see it's doing my calculations, and then now I've zeroed out my hours, and I'm giving myself a crew-based timesheet for entry. Same thing with per diem, same thing with equipment. So we can build a really nice entry function. So it's kind of in the base elementary version of this, is I can build any type of grid entry that I want. But the cool factor is whenever this can be populated from an external data source. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of that. This for the first example, this is an example of a client, and they've been live here for a couple of months now. This is actually underneath the hood, synchronized to their ERP system. It's also keeping up to date multiple master service agreements at that particular location, right? So if you're familiar with the way plant work works, there's a negotiated master service agreement for all the tasks that you can bill against. And that whole exercise has to be signed off by a plant attendant, and it's just the whole rigmarole. So for us, what we're doing is we're reading a time clock, facial recognition time clock. They walk in, it clocks them in, they walk out, clocks them out. At night, and we do this actually at 2 times because they have night shift and day shift, it pulls everybody that clocked in for that particular location, and it populates them on the job site, on this particular timesheet. It also, based on the master service agreement and the employee file, defaults their craft, as well as if they drive a truck for the company or if they have their own truck that has all their logic in there. Plus the per diem rules based upon those employees are in here as well. So what ends up happening is that this thing is already filled out and it's routed to the accountant, and it's sitting on the accountant's inbox as soon as they get in the morning, the project accountant. The project accountant then spreads those hours across activity codes. And then once they have it dialed in, they then submit it. And in the portal, the client will come in and actually sign off on it inside of the portal. They can ask questions if there's issues, but this is effectively a daily transaction. No paper was created, and this process, which used to take a full day trying to get all this stuff documented and signed off on, is now a morning exercise. So this is a tremendous value for this particular client. Another example here is over here, and this is a weigh station. So every time they go and the truck pulls up and it weighs it, it'll default what the ticket number is, the masonry. This comes directly from that weigh device and then inserts the units and does the amount. This routes for review, and then we send it as an AR transaction and fire an email to the customer. So all of these processes, I know I'm kind of in the weeds here, but appreciate the flexibility of the system is that we can intercept any data and display it in any grid that we want, route it for approval and archive, and then ultimately get it back out of our system. So this opens up a lot of opportunity for a couple of different processes, and I highlighted some of them. One of which would be inventory counts. If we were doing kind of a cycle count at the end of the month, we could literally take out, all the inventory at a particular location, which could be a truck, it could be a warehouse, and it could just be a big checklist that they have to go through and update, the actuals versus what they should have, or what the system says they have. That's one example. Purchase orders, multi-line purchase orders that are heavier than just hitting a couple of duplications. Say it's 20, 30 lines. You could do that, especially we're building a copy feature as well into the system that'll allow you to kind of, take those kind of boilerplate purchases and be able to just pull those down and modify those as needed. Material receiving, that's a big deal as well, where we enter in that particular purchase order, and then we pull in all the line items, and then we can receive off the line items. That's another big value add. We're only limited really to the accounting applications that are around it for that purpose. I mentioned kind of the time clock to work ticket type scenario. Crew-based timesheets is a big one. You can imagine creating work orders in your accounting system and then spawning that out for workflow and route inside of our system with all the information. They put in their materials and work and then submit it through. That's another big value add. This is actually the precursor to our credit card transaction reconciliation, where we can effectively pull from Amex, Visa, and MasterCard, and then route that cluster with all the transactions to the cardholder so that they can effectively attach the receipt and then submit it in. It becomes their expense report. You can also submit transactions if you just had like your own personal expense report. You could just fire in receipts, and then from there, at the end of the month, whenever you say, okay, we're going to build this expense report, we just pull all those receipts together in one expense report, and then they just submit it in one form, which is another example we had a client ask for. And then also we're getting into piece rate billing. We have a new project that we hope to get here in the next couple of weeks, and that'll be kind of a new frontier for us as well, but another place for us to use the cluster. So we're really, really excited about where, we appreciate this is a pretty major feature. It effectively for us lets us mimic any competitor that we have and any competitor in the future. And then we're only going to make this more and more robust. Some of the advanced, version 2 that'll be out by the end of the year is we're going to have organizational security on the column controls. So if I wanted to hide a column from a particular like a customer, for example, or make something read-only for that particular organization, I can do that. So that gives us another some more value add. So there's a couple of features in here. If you're not using the application, it may not make sense to you, but this is another big opportunity for us. So kind of moving on to the next piece of this is just some additional users. I touched on this a little bit earlier, but the new user invitation. So this is now, beforehand, whenever you logged, whenever you created users in the system, you actually just set them up as a user inside of the system. Now it actually moves them through an invitation process when you invite them into your portal. So that's now done in user management. You can also see pending invitations that are out. So if somebody hasn't accepted it yet, you can do that. But it's a very easy invitation. Select the license type, and then select which portal you're going to invite them to come into. So this is another new feature that was added here fairly recently. A big piece to Omnidek, and a lot of people maybe aren't thinking about their Omnidek implementation like this, but it's important to know that we are. So there's a tenet of what we were always trying to create with Omnidek was that we wanted to not just migrate you from file-based document management, but to data-driven document management, but we wanted to get the company's data accessible in real time. When it's scanned and stored as a document, you lose all of the reporting other than whatever the description is, maybe some index tags. It really, 8.5 by 11 is really where things go to die. In our case, it's really just the beginning because we can aggregate the data. Everything literally is a data point, the more things that you commit to the platform. Well, because we have a robust API and as well as the synchronization to your ERP system, appreciate I have all the data available to me and I have a public API to access it. So what a lot of companies aren't really realizing they're in a position to do is that now they can bolt on a Power BI for $9 a month or a Tableau or one of these types of business intelligence utilities And we're just a data source over here for that particular utility. So now when you start thinking about, using our system to do payment applications or field purchase requisitions that are out for approval versus what's already in the job cost commitments, we've got all the recipe there to give proper real-time analysis on cash or productivity, right? So however we design these forms, we need to be thinking about it for what kind of dashboards do we want the executive team to have access to, because literally you can build Omnidek from the dashboard backwards so that we're gathering the types of data that we need to be able to visualize it, and there's no coding required. It's just dragging and dropping and making sure we're getting the right sequence of data to give us that visibility. And Power BI is such a powerful tool, and also there's a lot of younger, hungry people that know how to navigate Power BI. These are business analysts and data analysts that are equipped to do this for you today. And we're just simply a data source that's giving you kind of the real-time data versus what you've got legacy sitting in ERP. And I just wanted to kind of highlight this to you. We also provide this service as well. So if you don't have anybody in your purview or at the company that can do it, we can definitely, look at building you a dashboard for your executive team and doing that as a service. Now, a couple of other little things that we added to just to make the experience better is that now whenever we're building forms inside of the system, so I'll create this here. If I want to add a asset, and let's say it's an asset that doesn't exist, this would be like a pick list. And let's say it's days of the week here. Well, I may not have set up a days of the week asset, so I don't want to have to go back into assets and create a list. So you can simply just create one on the fly. So this would be like days here, and then I can select select the category here, and then I can start adding my days, Monday, and then Tuesday, right? So this is a very easy way so you don't get stuck having to go bounce back and forth between the form designer, which is one of the pain points that a lot of clients were experiencing. Now you can do that all inside of the form designer, which is a big deal. Now, one last little piece, a lot of companies may not realize what channels does or may not be using it as much. When you're just using the system for one process, channels is, it's just another place to look at it other than your insights. But the more you use Omnidek, and we're a good example, this is our implementation for our software company. And this is every process inside of our company. I don't have a filing cabinet. We don't have a OneDrive. We don't have any of that. Every process at our company initiates through Omnidek. And we do the majority of our communication inside of Omnidek. So whether we're talking about a project scope or something along these lines, everything is in here in the system. And this is just a wonderful alternative to using email. Well, the big value in committing more processes to Omnidek is that by referencing customers or employees or vendors on the particular forms, I'm creating a historical record of that activity. So an example of this is that if I select maybe, let's say a customer, these are the active channels that I've got going on. So let's say, for example, I selected a client. Well, this is all the client data out of my ERP system. We use Sage Intacct. This is the chronological order. So usually if I'm checking on something, what's the last thing we did with this client? Well, I can very quickly click on it and see, okay, well, they were mentioned right here because we were right here. We're answering questions for Jordan. And then if I click on want to type in a message, Adam's going to get it and it's going to pop right up. So it's very drill down oriented. Well, appreciate this is the chronological order, but this is the entire record history. This, I don't need a folder structure at this point in time because I can go drill into anything that is related to this client. If I want to see the original, project center request, I can go click on here and view it, and here it is with all the note log attached to it. And no one had to maintain this. This is just automatically done. But the same logic is there as well for my employee. Like this is my employee file. So instead of it now, all the customer documents, now it's expense reimbursements and out of office requests and feature requests and whatever else that I created as an employee here. So this is a tremendously valuable tool. It has all of the security components. So if they don't have access to forms, they can't drill into it. If they don't have access to that particular asset, they can't drill into it. So you have all the security parameters that people can't go drill into here with by finding anything that they shouldn't. But this is a huge value add, especially for small to mid-sized clients that are just trying to figure out what is their philosophy on document management. Omnidek just kind of creates it automatically, and everything is accessible and reportable here in legacy fashion. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that that's a big deal there. One last little piece, and some of you guys may have this already if we've done services with you, but this is a little utility that we built called Dexter. And Dexter for us is just a place for us to manage your services, and we can load this on a localized desktop. So for example, this is a kind of a little sample project, but let's take like a purchase request, for example. Once the purchase request is approved, these purchase requests need to get over to the accounting system as a job cost commitment. So this can be done automatically, or it can be done as a select all and process, depending if they want the manual or not. But it's also sending to SharePoint. You could also send a PDF email, whatever the case may be. So this is kind of a managed service location for us to check if the synchronizations are running, if the services are running, if emails are getting sent out. All that, it's our little helper tool called Dexter. And we're going to be continually enhancing that too to make it more self-service, do more Power BI style integrations, as well as we have an email service called Mailgun, so we'll have that embedded as well, where you can kind of manage the emails that go out of the company if you're using custom emails. So that's kind of the big features there of the application. Now, that's everything that's in the system today. What's really exciting is kind of where we're headed. And we're moving at a pretty quick clip here. So we've got a lot of opportunity, and I'm going to highlight these because these are I wouldn't say that they're not baked yet. So I guess the best way of putting this is that we're looking for clients that maybe see a project that they're interested in that they'd want to use Omnidek for, and get involved in this project. So we can, because obviously we're going to be polling customers and doing our investigation, and we kind of understand what the industry is doing, at kind of a grandiose scale. But we are looking for those early clients that are willing to be beta testers for us and actually help give insight on how best to kind of design some of these features as well. One of the first ones I'll kind of draw your attention to is the payment application portal. We believe that the Omnidek can do a pretty good job at kind of onboarding the paperwork from a new hire, warranty requests, things like that are generally pretty one-sided, submitting forms as need be. But we believe to really get to the next level and to really make a stance as the portal utility, that we have to be where the cash is, if you will, and the payment application portal seems to be the right mix, and we have all the utilities to be able to really create a really wonderful solution. So one of the first passes that we're going to do, we have 2 or 3 clients that are already kind of signed up for this, is the payment application portal. But ours will be dynamic enough to handle a couple of different variations of this. So the first of which is where the subcontractor simply gets invited to come in maybe at a particular date of the month, and it's just a reminder, and they come in and they fill it out. No data is already on it. They're just filling it out and then submitting it on. That's the kind of baseline. We can do it based on a draw schedule, or where the GC initiates the process. So effectively, the GC is filling it out first and then routing it to the sub. Hey, here's what I'm going to pay you. Are you okay with it or not? And then beating that up through the workflow, or potentially reading the contract or the previous bill to date, and then having that pre-populated and making it very easy on the sub just to enter in either a percentage complete or a lump sum complete, and then have it do the calculation. As this will also keep track of the kind of the proactive compliance management. So keeping the OSHA logs up to date, certificates of insurance and things like that. Even on the employee level with certifications that need re-up or TWICs expiring and whatnot. To give you a little bit of a preview of what that's going to look like here, I'll kind of show you that in this screen. So this would be an example of kind of a custom email notification that will be going out to the sub. They simply click one link here, and then it goes directly into the portal if they've already logged in, or at least they'll log in again. And then from there, they can just update their information, submit it on, and it's done. And then that'll update inside of Omnidek and effectively relieve that alert. So this is going to give you an opportunity to kind of put those schedules in place. Also doing kind of a payment application reminders where when they log into the portal, They can have these kind of more custom experiences. So this is really an example of maybe an unqualified sub going through the pre-qualification process versus a sub that's already been qualified, and this is kind of keeping track of what they need to update, but this is the payment applications that haven't been submitted yet. So this is kind of a taste for what we're going to be building upon. These we're calling widgets. So we're going to have kind of some subcontractor portal widgets that we'll be able to apply for whatever the experience is required for that particular subcontractor. So this is kind of what's headed from the subcontractor aspect here. Now, to kind of dive in a little bit more, the next piece of this is really going to be the next big core piece of the application. Obviously, forms, inbox, channels, and insights is kind of the core pillars of the application. We're actually developing task management. So task management is a little bit unique in Omnidek. Most task management systems are generally spawned. You just create a task, or maybe there's a project template, and that's kind of a list of tasks with some scheduling and whatnot. That's kind of how task management works. In our case, we're going to have that as an option where you can create tasks on the fly, but we create this kind of unique thing where we can build conditions on forms. So let's say, for example, somebody submits a daily report in, and it's got a piece of equipment that's marked ready for pickup, for example. Well, that is effectively just a daily report that was submitted in, but it's actually a task for the equipment and logistics guy to go pick up that piece of equipment. Well, that's a condition on a form that creates a task. And so this is a kind of an involved feature. It's a pretty big feature, so it'll be probably in Q2 of next year. But I'll give you a little bit of a preview of what that's going to look like. You're going to be able to kind of create your own task boards with priority statuses. And this will effectively be the sourced form for this. You'll also just be able to build them on the fly. We're also integrating calendar views, whether we use it Gantt or maybe calendar months. All of these things will be available to you as well. So this is kind of the precursor visuals of what task management will be, but we're really, really excited about this because when you kind of put all this stuff together where you're building a lot of these processes, now you're just effectively saying, okay, if this happens, I need you to go do this, and then they're just completing it down the list, and this is just their to-do. So we'll also be able to integrate this into workflow. So if we wanted to create a task off of workflow, we can do that as well. So this is a big feature for us coming down the pike as well. Okay, let's see, just kind of wrapping up. I think the last piece of it too, we are going to embed right now, all of the communication thread is attached to a particular process or a channel. We are going to have the opportunity to have non-form chat. So it's effectively just a communication thread, very similar to Slack, that's going to be inside of the application that can just be used for whatever purpose. So obviously that's a lot easier to do that than it is to build a business process management tool with chat in it. So that'll be pretty easy, pretty straightforward. We'll just be implementing that too, probably early part of next year. So that'll be another good value add for the platform. So the last little piece here, we have clients that really run the spectrum as far as their implementations go. Some are, they're plotting along with their one form and that's all they really needed it for. And, Omnidek's pricing structure is such that, it can be just one or two processes for a company. But then we have the other clients that have really just gone over and beyond, really getting invested in the application. I mean, we've got clients that have 40, 50, 60 processes built inside of the system. We're a candidate. You couldn't take Omnidek away from us because it's so valuable for us. But what we want to be able to do is really figure out, okay, how can we get our clients to experience the full breadth of Omnidek? And a lot of what we've kind of come to the realization is that, there's generally especially for smaller clients, not a dedicated resource to be able to do it. Everybody's got their department that they're responsible to, but there's not a centralized figure that can kind of play business analyst and coordinate the efforts across departments. And also, if there's not an IT guy, there's for sure probably not a developer either to maybe do some of these little customizations or build a dashboard in Power BI and things like that. So one of the things that we've decided to offer as a product line that we definitely encourage you to consider is what we're calling a concierge service. So effectively, for the cost of a part-time employee, You get effectively a business analyst who knows your system as well as what other clients are doing. So they have a perspective on how other people are using the system, and they're an Omnidek expert, as well as a developer. And the two-man team gets associated with your account. And their job is really just customer success. This is Lauren. She's in charge of our customer success. Her experience, she's the assistant to the director of operations of a pretty large construction company that self-performs. So she's very fluent in construction and speak, as well as all the different industries that she's worked in just by onboarding Omnidek. So she kind of heads this up as well with Lindsay, who's a client manager, she's also a developer in her own right, and she manages the services developers behind her. And this team is really what we're trying to use to look at 6 month to 12-month agreements. Or if this is something where if you're looking at what we're doing, saying, hey, we're really not maximizing the utility of Omnidek, and you want help doing this, we're offering this as kind of just a reduced hourly rate, effectively putting this on retainer, but you're getting 25 hours to be used across development time, consulting hours, and we'll roll over as well. And it's everything, like literally we're building forms, building processes for you, building Power BI dashboards, and really just helping you get to a full implementation strategy. So I definitely encourage you, if that's something that you want to take us up on, we would love to do this. We really are trying to build out our team of implementation people, and as well as our consultants that have come on board to start implementing Omnidek more aggressively for their clients as well. Now, the last little piece of this, I'll just kind of give you an update, is I think it's important to kind of know, because a lot of you guys know that we're a younger company, and we've been making a lot of headway at the board level and kind of in our fundraising efforts. So, the best is really yet to come for the application. So hopefully you're encouraged with that. But I want to highlight two people these are new board members from us. Some of you guys may have heard of Acumatica. That's a new cloud-based ERP system in the construction market. It's Joy Krishnamurthy is the vice president of the construction division. He heads that up. He's actually a board member for us. He spent 12 years at Microsoft, and he's a big proponent of what we've done and kind of where we're headed. And he advises kind of as a product manager level, because that's really his experience back both at Microsoft and now at Acumatica. As well as Huey No. Obviously, we're in growth mode. So Huey, some of you guys may have heard of BOMGAR or Beyond Trust, IT help desk software. Huey took them really from the early stages, a couple $100,000 in revenue to now a $2 billion company. And Huey's now come on board to kind of be a part-time COO from both the advisory board, but also in helping us kind of get structured for our scale and growth. So both of these team members are just, tremendously valuable for our little team as far as making sure we're doing things the right way and that we're headed in the right direction, and also that we're, we have the capacity to scale and do big things for the company and our client base. So we're very excited about kind of those new additions to the team. The last piece of this, I think, we get asked all the time as well to, how can I have a feature request, or maybe they're not sure exactly, how to request something or how best to communicate with us. And that's kind of on us to really formalize ways that you can get more involved as a customer. The first of which is we're going to be offering the ability for customers to participate in the product advisory committee. So this is actually going to be broken up into a couple of specific committees that are going to be focused more on specific, projects that are coming up. So kind of, really 6 months before something's released, both in the design process and then kind of the features, exploring it in beta before it gets pushed to production, those types of things. So we're going to be, you're going to start seeing more and more information about if you want to participate in that advisory committee. It's a great way for you to give us good product feedback on what it is today, what you wish it did. And then if it's a new feature, talking about, hey, well, we use this app and this is how this works, or this is, what we're not happy about the way this process works today and how it could be way better. Those are the kind of things that we'd be looking at. So I definitely think if you're going to participate in that, you need to have a really good understanding of what you think it should do, or at least have an opinion one way or the other. But that would be very helpful, and we definitely encourage that. We're not going to meet a tremendous amount of time, but generally probably once every 30 days or so, and then we'll review specs and early versions of the software. So if you just like kind of seeing how the sausage is made and behind the scenes, that would be a great thing for you. Last thing too, I'll highlight this. We do have, we continually raise capital. We're a early growth company. We do have customers that are investors in our company. And sometimes we catch that, oh, I didn't know you all were raising capital. We would have participated. If you have any interest in that, you can feel free to reach out to me. I'll have my contact here. If that's something that ownership is interested in, just for diversification's sake. More than welcome to share with you our data room and kind of what our plans are in the future growth rounds. Now, the next two pieces I think are a big deal as well. We are trying to build the portal solution for companies looking to get rid of the email communication between their customers and vendors and replace that with portal communication. We see that in doctor-patient portals, how that transitioned. We want to be that in construction. We want to do that in field services and in other industries that we go into. So one of the things that we're trying to create is really kind of a portal pioneer program where obviously, working with you guys, if you do have an initiative that, hey, we want to build out a customer portal, we want to build out some portal for that experience, we have the capacity to really make that experience better by adding a few features or whatever the case may be. So we'd like to kind of understand if you do have an initiative, we really want our clients to drive this. Let us participate with you by maybe adding some user experience elements that maybe make that a little bit better. And then also by doing so, offer you guys kind of a referral program where that could be a discount option off your annuity. We're still kind of brainstorming on best ways to kind of incentivize that. But we are trying to create kind of this portal pioneer program, mainly just because it sounds good because it's 3 Ps. But no, we're excited. We really want to target that because we feel like over the next 12 months, if we can really start building out the use case that the portal experience is better than email, which we believe it is, then we can really make a big splash in several industries, and that's kind of where we're headed and where we're focused. So I'm going to leave this up here for now. This is my contact information. If you have anything, shoot me an email. If you want to call me directly, we'll check the chat here. So if that fillable PDF Form W4 printable after completion, yes. So that packet, the legacy packet that I filled out with the employee form, at the end that kind of goes through multiple approvals internally where we have to call our accountant and get them set up on the payroll and goes through some benefits, enrollment, thing like that. But then what we can do effectively with just the click of a button is that we can just download it in PDF and then we can attach it to an email and send it. Our accountant prefers us to do that. Just they have a copy of it, but it's effectively got the form as the cover sheet. So whatever questions that you had outside of the PDF, and then all the subsequent forms behind it are the PDFs that you filled out in the order that they were in. So it really creates just a big PDF file like they would if you just scanned it in after they filled it out on a job site or something. Hope that answers that question. All right. Well, that is pretty much it. I appreciate everybody that decided to sit in, and hopefully you can feel a little bit of momentum here at Omnidek. We've got some really great stuff coming. We really think that some of these features are game changers, especially on the cluster side. So thank you guys for participating. And again, this is recorded, so I'll share this with anybody who wants to forward this around and take a closer look. So thanks so much for your time, and we hope to talk soon. Thanks so much.